Hello and welcome back to World 360. We thought the Russia-Ukraine crisis might be coming to a close, with Moscow saying it will pull back a few troops. But after a lot of back and forth, it appears there's not been much change on ground. The US and Germany have meanwhile urged Russia to take real steps towards de-escalation. However, there's something else that could jeopardize de-escalation. On Tuesday, the Russian parliament, or the Duma, urged President Vladimir Putin to recognize the territories of Donetsk and Luhansk, two Russian-backed breakaway regions in Ukraine. It's surprising that the Duma has backed such a motion at a time when Russia and the NATO alliance are trying to ease tensions. This has clearly caught the attention of the Ukrainian leadership. It has now appealed to the UN Security Council to address the Duma's motion, fearing it could undermine the peace agreements made between Russia and Ukraine back in 2014. So here's why Donetsk and Luhansk are at the heart of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Donetsk and Luhansk are located in eastern Ukraine. In 2014, portions of these territories declared independence from Ukraine, but no country currently recognizes them as sovereign states. These two portions have been occupied by Russian and Russian-backed separatist forces since 2014 and consist of very small populations. The separatist-held portion of Donetsk is home to 2.3 million people, and the one in Luhansk consists of 1.5 million people. Both these breakaway territories are entirely dependent on Moscow for financial and military support, and their leaders have openly proposed joining the Russian Federation. Russian-backed rebels have been fighting Ukrainian troops in these two territories since 2014. A CBS report showed that the only way into the war-torn area of Donetsk is through a series of checkpoints and roadblocks where you need permission from the Ukrainian military and the Russian-backed separatists in the region. Now let's look at why Donetsk and Luhansk are key to the peace agreements made between Russia and Ukraine back in 2014. The Ukraine crisis, as you may recall, began in 2013 when Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych rejected a deal for greater integration with the European Union, sparking mass protests. Russia backed Yanukovych, while the US and Europe supported the protesters. After this, a lot of things happened. Anti-government protests toppled Yanukovych's government. Russia invaded and annexed Crimea. Then pro-Russia separatist rebels started seizing territory in eastern Ukraine. And then they also shut down a Malaysian Airlines flight, killing almost 300 people. The war in this region has mainly centered around the Donbas region, which includes Donetsk and Luhansk, as well as the separatist-held territories further east. What's interesting is that you can't just classify it as a civil war between separatists and the Ukrainian government, because Russia is a key factor too. Now, on 12th February 2015, after a failed attempt at a ceasefire, the Minsk II agreement was introduced to bring peace to the region. It was signed in Minsk, Belarus, by the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany. Now, one could argue that the recent Russia-Ukraine tensions along the border are a result of poor implementation of the Minsk II agreement and different interpretations. Now, the Minsk Accords envisaged Ukraine reabsorbing Donetsk and Luhansk with a quote-unquote special status. But Moscow saw the accords as a way to bring in a Russia-aligned administration in Luhansk and Donetsk, and a special status granted to them before they reunited with the rest of Ukraine. This would give Moscow de facto control over the region and, by virtue, control over Ukraine's shift to the West and even NATO. This is why the Duma's push for Putin to recognize these two breakaway states is being viewed by Ukraine as a threat to the Minsk Accords. Before we conclude, let's look at some of Putin's rhetoric on the Donbas region. In the past, he has alleged that there is genocide going on in the region and that there is also rampant Russia-phobia. Later, we saw US President Joe Biden warning that Russia could invade Ukraine on false pretexts and fabricate an attack. Therefore, the war in Ukraine also appears to be a crisis of disinformation. Thank you so much for watching. This is Pia Krishnankutty for ThePrint. Do subscribe to ThePrint.in and follow us on social media.